Hi everyone, welcome to this very special virtual event. I'm Sarah, the Chief of Communications and Growth here at the Great Barrier Reef Foundation. And I'm really excited to be joining with you during one of nature's most magical moments, coral spawning. So whether you're tuning in from the coast, the city, or somewhere far from the ocean, welcome. If you'd like to ask a question at any time during this webinar, please pop it in the chat and there'll be time for questions at the end. But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Jagera people as the traditional custodians on the lands on which I'm dialing in from today in Meanjin in Brisbane. And I'd like to pay my deepest respects and recognition to the traditional owners of the Great Barrier Reef and its catchments, and acknowledge their connection, their leadership, and their knowledge that continues to protect and restore sea country. So I do see one question come through. We will be sharing the recording. So yes, that will come out to you after this, after the webinar. So for those who haven't experienced a coral spawning before, let me help set the scene. Imagine this, it's night on the reef, the water is calm and the moon is full. And as if on cue, corals release millions of tiny pink and gold bundles into the water, each with the potential for new life. And it's nature's way of restoring itself. And it's a powerful symbol of hope. And it's this hope that we're here today to celebrate and to inspire us. So earlier in the week, after the first corals spawned up on Monday night, up on the Whitsundays, I was lucky enough to catch the Great Barrier Reef Foundation's Coral Restoration Project Manager, Johnny Gaskell, for a chat. So he was actually up in the Whitsundays during coral spawning. So I'll share the video of that conversation shortly. But before we get started into that conversation, I just want to share a quick video so you can also experience the magic of coral spawning.
Each year, this entire reef explodes into life. It's like an underwater snowstorm. It's absolutely incredible.
All the corals on the Great Barrier Reef synchronize and spawn all together. And they take their cues from the tides, the moon, the temperature, and then when the time is right, they spawn and mass all together.
All of the hard corals and some of the soft corals release their reproductive bundles into the water so that those eggs and sperm can find each other, fertilise and form new baby corals. It's the largest synchronised reproductive event on the planet. Protecting coral and restoring coral all comes down to its biology, how it reproduces. We know that if we can harness that process, we can really help to restore at a different scale than we have ever before.
With leading institutions in Australia and the investment we've put over the last few years, we are ready to scale up coral reef restoration and adaptation. What do we mean by scale up? We mean scaling up the technology. We're now ready to produce millions of corals every year, and that's the right scale for us to make a difference.
Corals naturally spawn. We're just taking that natural sequence and then ensuring that all of those spawn, all of those coral babies are going to the reefs that need them most. And along the way, we're trying to find a way for those coral babies to be tougher, to adapt to future conditions so that they'll survive future marine heat waves.
Because it happens just once a year, we have a really small window to act during that time.
We know so much more about how coral reefs tick. We know how to rebuild coral reefs at scale, and we're really getting close to being able to put these promising prototypes in the water.
We have solutions, we have people engaged, we need the investment, and it's time for everybody to play a part.
Today, I'm joined by the Great Barrier Reef Foundation's very own Johnny Gaskell, calling in from the Whitsundays. Johnny, pretty big week up in the Whitsundays. It looks pretty gorgeous up there. Tell us what's going on and just why are we caring about corals? Why are corals so important?
Thanks, Sarah. Good to see you. Why are corals so important? Well, there's obviously, to myself and the team, corals are extremely important. That's why we got into this field, is because we care so much about corals. But from a more ecological standpoint, corals really are the building blocks of that whole reef ecosystem. So without corals, you won't have tropical reefs. And the reason is they build the structures, they build the complexity within the coral reefs. And why that's important is because so many species depend on coral reefs. It's roughly about 25% of the known marine animals that we have on this planet depend on coral reefs. And so many of these species, yes, so many of these species need the intricacy of coral to survive, whether it be a habitat, and for some of them it's what they feed on. So from everything from your little symbiotic crabs that live inside the coral branches that very rarely come out, to fish that need these coral structures to hide overnight or when a predator comes. So within the coral structure itself, you might be looking at what looks like just one structure, one colony of lots of little animals, but there's many species that live inside. So that biodiversity, to keep biodiversity on coral reefs, you need to keep corals, not just for coral biodiversity, but for fish and invertebrates as well. More broadly, coral reefs are really important generally for that ocean ecosystem, but also for people. There's roughly 1 billion people around the world. Coastal communities depend directly on coral reefs, whether it be for food or to get implements or all kinds of different requirements that they need. Even coral reefs create a barrier for wave action during storms. So these coastal communities do depend on coral reefs as well. And I think, the Great Barrier Reef being the largest coral reef, it's such an important ecosystem that we obviously need to protect, to protect that biodiversity, because biodiversity ultimately is one of the major components that can help a reef combat the challenges that reefs are facing today.
Yeah, I mean, pretty incredible. So this time, so obviously incredibly important. Healthy oceans, healthy planet requires healthy coral reefs. So what does it mean for right now, this week? We've got coral spawning happening in the Whitsundays, later in December in Cairns and Port Douglas. So this time of year along the Great Barrier Reef, we just saw a video about coral spawning, but what does it mean to you as somebody who, is a marine biologist, operates in this space, and you're in the Whitsundays right now? So what is it about this time of year, coral spawning, that is so important to the health of the reef?
Well, it's an interesting event, coral spawning. It's definitely my favorite time of year, then Christmas and Easter after that. But
also important
everything just comes also important times of the year. The coral spawning event, it's the biggest synchronized reproductive event on the planet. It is really important because this is their one opportunity, or one or two, depending on the time of the year, one opportunity to help replenish other parts of the reef that have been impacted by something, whether it be a storm, increased water temperature, or crown of thorns. And what the corals do is they release these bundles. They're called gametes, and they can be all a few different colors, but generally pink or yellow or a light creamy color. And they release them all simultaneously. Safety in numbers. If you're all releasing these little egg bundles at one time, there's less chance that you're going to get eaten by a predator, which really is just fish and other little invertebrates that swim in the water column, or even corals themselves. And by simultaneously releasing all at the one time, you've also got a higher chance of fertilization with the different gene pools. So these corals sending out the eggs in the hope that they can repopulate other areas. That's if they hope. I know they're corals, I don't think too much. So obviously it's automatic and biologically automatic. And the event happens generally around mid-November, whenever the full moon is. So, or 4 to 6 days after the full moon. And it's speaking fairly generally. You can go to some locations and 7 days after the full moon, you can have a coral spawn. So ever since coral spawning has been identified as this synchronized event that all happens at the one time, there's been, you know, efforts to try and see how we can utilize this to help reefs recover and ideally help reefs build resilience into the future, or find out what we can do to assist with this process. So the coral spawning happens November, December. This year we've got a split spawn. So we've got the inshore islands are most likely to go in November. Well, they did the last couple of nights. And the offshore reefs, some of them will go or would have gone in the last couple of nights, but also in December we're expecting more spawning events to happen more on the offshore reefs, but it doesn't mean that the inshore islands won't spawn again in December because of the timing of the full moon. It's a bit confusing this year. So
okay, so we've got the coral spawning. We've got, you know, it's a natural phenomenon that happens this year. Split spawning in across the Great Barrier Reef. So one of the things that we do to give corals a helping hand is what we call at the Foundation coral IVF. And can you explain a little bit more about what that actually means for the corals? What people like yourself, scientists, traditional owners, tourism operators are doing out on the reef during this spawning season to give corals this helping hand?
Yeah, well, there's actually a lot going on this year, and particularly the last couple of years. Originally, there was only 1 or 2 programs running on the Great Barrier Reef, but now there's multiple projects running all the way up the Great Barrier Reef. So to start with, in November, the focus is on the central Great Barrier Reef and the southern Great Barrier Reef. And then in December, the focus will be up in the northern Great Barrier Reef. And there's a range of different collection types. There's a range of different holding facilities and holding instruments that will hold the coral spawn long enough so it can develop into a larvae that can then be deployed onto the reef. And there's also a number of different deployment methods. So we're trialing a new method this year using the seed box. So this has been trialed up at Lizard Island before, and now CSIRO are trialing it down here, working in collaboration with the tourism operators. And there's another couple of methods that we're using down here in the Whitsundays, which deployment will be in a couple of days now, is putting these devices or the cradles into the larval pools.
So larval pools are like floating pools.
I didn't go to the larval pools, did I?
Yeah, so the larval pools are like floating pools on the water that collect the coral spawn, and then the corals grow on those cradles. Is that right?
Yes. So basically, a night of coral spawn collection kind of looks like this. You head out about 7 o'clock at night, cruising along. It's very, very, very dark because it's nighttime. And you come to a location where you've identified that there is a high amount of corals, the right corals, the corals that you want to collect spawn of, and then hopefully deploy it onto a nearby reef. And the idea is to try and get that moment where all the coral eggs, little gametes, hit the surface and kind of form a slick, we call it, which is like a line. Just looks like a big line of slick, a slick of coral spawn, basically. And you go and collect that. So the tourism operators, there's multiple different operators out there, or were out there over the last couple of nights, and they go and collect them into the buckets and then put them into a bigger bucket, move it around, and then hope that fertilization occurs there, and then put the coral spawn, all of that spawn, into larval pools, which are kind of like a floating pool with mesh net underneath, so none of the larvae can get out. And over the next 4 to 5 days, those larvae will develop in the pools. So they're developing the natural water column, but being consolidated so they don't drift off and get eaten by other fish. Then after that, on deployment day, the corals, some of the corals are just released onto the seabed in the hope that they'll settle down in that concentrated area. Some of the corals are going to be put into seed boxes. So that's the new method that we're using this year with CSIRO. And then Australian Institute of Marine Science have developed these coral cradles, and they will be put into the actual pools, or put into the pools, so the corals will settle directly onto these coral devices, and they're made of ceramic. So what happens eventually is, once these corals set onto the ceramic goes down to the cradles, go down to the bottom of the seabed, and that coral will grow over it, and you won't be able to see any of the ceramic device anymore. So 3 main methods of deployment, but everyone's collecting spawn at the same time. So it's kind of everyone's coming together. We've got tourism operators, traditional owners, multiple science institutions, and community volunteers as well. So there's plenty of people out there that are helping out.
So it's pretty fascinating that it's not just, you mentioned CSIRO, the Australian Institute of Marine Science. So there's, we've got the scientists, but then it really does take this whole reef community, doesn't it, of traditional owners, of local communities, of tourism operators. It's everybody coming together over this window of time. Is that, what does the future look like for coral restoration? Are we trying to put all this science in the hands of local communities, tourism operators, or is it still going to be next year, the year after, this combined collaborative effort to give this helping hand to the reef?
Yeah, ultimately, projects like this, they need the tourism industry. You really can't have scale up projects like this without the tourism industry. For a couple of reasons. The tourism industry, depending on where you are on the reef, the tourism operators that go out to the reefs, they have the right equipment. The boats they have are designed for the area they're in, and they've done years of research to work out which boats work best in the area. So they are the people that can access everything. They've also got the passionate staff, the staff who really, these are the people that really aren't going to give up. So these are the people that are always going to be there doing their best to try and find solutions where solutions are needed. And the other side of it is the tourism industry know these reefs better than anyone else. They're the people that are in the water day in, day out. They see these small changes. They notice when something's not right, and they can also monitor changes over time. So because they have such an intimate connection with the reefs that they go to, they are the best people for the job to be involved in projects like this. And the projects that are all being trialled as part of research projects at the moment. So we're really trying to work out which projects work in which area, which methods work in which areas, and which of these methods can be scaled up and are likely to help build resilience into the future.
Yeah, so I guess just taking kind of a step out, got two more questions for you, a bit more.
That's right, you can answer me if you want. I'm here now. I've got a nice spot.
You're sitting outside, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's nice.
So, you talk about resilience for the future. Obviously, it's no secret. We see it on the news. We hear about it, that corals are under pressure. From your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges that coral reefs in Australia and globally are facing today?
Well, the biggest challenge, I guess in one answer, the biggest challenge is the frequency of disturbances. Mm-hmm. There's lots of things that are happening out at the reef. And if you just looked at one of these things, the reef is in a position at the moment where it can still recover. So there is enough coral out there to recover, but we are having an increase. There is an increase in frequency of disturbance. And the main one is climate change, or increased water temperature because of climate change. So as that water heats up, it gets too warm, and if it stays too warm for too long over summer, I'm sure most people have heard the corals do bleach. So they eject the algae that lives inside their body. They depend on that algae for food, and it can take 6 to 10 weeks to get that algae back in, and that's only if the water cools down in time. So having this increased disturbance because bleaching is being added to the, I guess, the suite of disturbances that happens out there in the reef is what's making it much more urgent now. The other two major impacts, obviously storm damage. Cyclones have happened for many years. They can cause catastrophic damage to a reef. Crown of thorns starfish, an outbreak, a proper outbreak where there's hundreds and hundreds of crown of thorns piling up on each other, eating all the corals in sight. If you look at all of these disturbances at once, and freshwater runoff, river runoff as well, all of these happening over you know, a 5 or 10 year period, the problem is that as the frequency increases, the corals will struggle to keep up with those changes.
So then if we flip it and we say all of these things are happening, and we've spoken about before, you know, the work that's being done by lots of different people on reef restoration, trialing new solutions and seeing what works to build that resilience of the reef. What gives you hope?
What gives me hope? Well, there's probably two things that gives me hope. I think spending a lot of time out on the reef, and even over the last couple of days getting in and seeing where this location is currently at in terms of its recovery journey from Cyclone Debbie. And it's evident that at this point in time, the reef can regenerate, in some areas at least, regenerate itself fairly quickly. And the Whitsundays has been quite a fast recovery compared to what was expected. So the ability for the reef to surprise us, and the ability for nature to surprise us, and that ability for reefs to adapt certainly gives me hope. But also there is a concern that the reef will not be able to keep up with the frequency of disturbance. So the people coming together, the scientists, the technology that scientists are using, working together and having so many passionate people that just will not give up, that also gives me hope. The fact that we've come such a long way, even in 5 or 6 years, in terms of what we're doing to help reef recovery. The future that we don't even know yet. We don't know where we're going to be technology-wise and with methods in the future, but that gives me hope that, you know, there's so many people out here that just won't give up.
That's brilliant. And you are one of them, Johnny. Are you back out on the reef today, tomorrow? What does the next couple of days look like?
Well, we've got to head out for deployment. That'll be in the next couple of days, and hopefully the weather holds. It's nice at the moment, but it's the Whitsundays. You never know.
No.
It was raining an hour ago, and now it's perfect.
Well, enjoy. Good luck with deployment. Really appreciate you taking some of your time up on the Whitsundays to talk to us today. And for everybody who is watching this, we, across our newsletters, on our social media, on our website, we will be talking about over the next couple of months the results of this deployment as well. So what Johnny's talking about today, what he's doing in the Whitsundays, we'll be able to talk about that over the next couple of months as we know how many of those coral cradles were deployed and what the reef's looking like over the next few months, over the next couple of years as we try to build that resilience back into the reef. So, Johnny, thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your week in the Whitsundays.
No worries, Sarah. Thanks. Will do.
Brilliant. So, you heard Johnny and I talking then about corals, about coral reef restoration. And we did mention some of the amazing people and institutions who are involved in reef restoration. So the Australian Institute of Marine Science, CSIRO, Southern Cross University, and lots of different people and institutions who are part of the Reef Restoration and Adaptation Program and working on projects under the Australian Government's Reef Trust. And now I would like to welcome Dr. Petra Lundgren, who is the Great Barrier Reef Foundation's Coral Restoration Lead. Welcome, Petra.
Thank you, Sarah. Nice to see you.
You too. So, Petra, you were actually up in Townsville earlier this week, and instead of seeing corals spawning out on the reef, you actually saw it in the CSIM, so the Australian Institute of Marine Science laboratory. What was that like, and why are we looking at corals both out on the reef and also in a laboratory?
Yeah, no, thanks, Sarah. Look, it was great to be back. I did most of my postdoctoral research up at Ames before the sea simulator was built. All I can say is it's an amazing setup that they've got up there. The aquaculture facilities, the breeding facilities, the spawning facilities they have right now are out of this world. I've never seen anything quite like it. So it's always really, really exciting to be up there and just watch what people are doing. And it's such a well-oiled machine these days. Back in the days when I was there, we were slopping around in buckets and it was all quite chaotic. And now everybody knows what they're doing. It's automated. The technology is amazing. It was fantastic to be back up there.
Brilliant. So we've got a couple of questions and just a reminder, we won't get to everybody's questions, but we will be answering them after this spawning. So if we don't get to yours, stay tuned, I guess. So, but Petra, just to kick us off, I can see someone's question there. If bleaching keeps happening, how do we know restored reefs won't just die again?
Yeah, we're starting with the good ones, aren't we? Look, many will. There is no doubt about that. We've got to acknowledge that warming is happening at a rate that a lot of corals can't sort of keep up adaptation-wise with that. And especially in these early days as we work on ways to increase survival rates, which is really a key priority from now on. The great thing about the methods that we are using is that they do allow us to do things like selective breeding. Back again, we've got aquaculture facilities, large aquaculture facilities in labs. So we can target those corals that survive bleaching and make sure that their offspring get out there in large numbers. And by being out on the reefs, they in turn boost the resilience of the reef upon which we put them, and also reefs that are connected to them. And this is also why numbers matter. The more we can get out there, this large scale, getting millions and millions of these corals out there, that we're working in the background on ensuring that they got an increasing heat tolerance, is really a way to boost that adaptive speed so that we can do that. So I'd say that the more we do this, the more of them will survive, even if the oceans keep warming up. Not forever, though. There is a point at which they will not anymore. So that's also critical that we keep sort of focusing on curbing the impacts of climate change.
Well, I mean, that runs into another question that somebody's posted, which is, doesn't focusing on restoration take away from the bigger issue of climate change?
Quick answer to that is absolutely no. They need to happen in parallel. They're both very, very critical. Look, even if we, through some miracle, stop all emissions tomorrow, there is inertia in the system. The oceans will keep warming, and they will keep warming for years to come. And corals can't keep up with the speed at which they're currently warming up. So we've got to do this. We've got to keep focusing on this, and we've got to make sure that we get this right. With that said, curbing emissions and addressing the core drivers of climate change remains the number one priority from a global action and policy point of view. That's a non-negotiable part of the puzzle.
Yeah, brilliant. And this one is, I'm sure there's many ways that you can answer this question, but how do you know if you've had a successful coral spawning season?
In the lab or in the wild? I mean, there are two things to this. I mean, I'll start by kind of reflecting on it, because I was up there on Monday and looked at it and got reminded about all of these things that you sort of come across as a researcher in this field. In the lab, I'd say predictability. We know within a day or two when the corals are going to spawn. We know within a few minutes what time of the day they're going to spawn, like after the sun sets. So if they adhere to that template and they spawn when we want them to, and the species go as we predicted, so that we can get our experiments up and running and everything is good, then that's a successful kind of coral spawning from a lab point of view. You heard Jane saying this earlier. It happens once a year. It's huge pressure on the researchers to get things right on that 1 or 2 days per year that it really happens. Out on the reef, successful spawning, what does that look like? Abundance. The more you see of it, the more successful it is. It's a flurry of bundles flowing, but you also need to have it on a night where the ocean currents are just right. There's not too much wind that disperses, takes it off the reef too quickly. So lots of it spawns and it stays on the reef, it fertilizes, there's the right kind of concentration and everything. And then in the years to come, you notice that there's successful recruitment, and that recruitment survives until they start reproducing. So it's many years afterwards, you will see how successful it was.
And unfortunately, we're pretty much at time. So I just want to ask you one more question, Petra, and it's the same one that Johnny finished up with. But knowing all that you do, all of the time that you've spent working on coral reef restoration in the lab, on the water, what gives you hope?
The diversity of coral reefs is what gives me hope. They are sort of species diversity. They are genetically diverse. They exist at a huge range of temperatures and ecosystems across the tropical sort of areas of the reef. Even within a reef, they exist in a lot of different microclimates. So in my mind, some part of the coral reefs will survive somewhere in the world, maybe not exactly the way that we know they are right now, but they will persist. They will be there. They have been there for millions of years. They will be there for millions of years to come. And knowing that there will always be a part of it that survives is what gives me hope. And I, hand on heart, think that some part of it will always be there in some manner.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Petra. Really appreciate your time today. And sadly, we don't have time to answer all of those questions, but as I said before, we will be answering them. We'll actually be doing so in the next Reef Insider, which is our monthly newsletter. So if you are not already a subscriber, we will pop a link in the chat where you can go to subscribe, or you can do so on our website. So again, thank you to Johnny, Petra, for answering our questions, and for everybody from joining today. Every breakthrough innovation we've shared is made possible because of people such as yourselves. And if you'd like to continue to support the science and the research that powers coral restoration, you can do so by donating to the foundation using the QR code that's on the screen, and we'll also pop a link in the chat for you. The reef story really is one of hope, of resilience, and collective action. And together we can safeguard the reef and this natural wonder for future generations. So from all of us here at the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.